My son was in the
I see my redhead, mess bag, tear shed, queen bee must squeeze. The stage smells, tells, hells, bells, misspells, knocks me on my knees. It didn't hurt, flirt, blood, squirt, stuff, shirt like me on a tree. After I count down 3 rounds in hell, I'll be in good company. Redhead, mess bed, tear shed, queen bee must squeeze. The stage smells, tells, hells, bells, misspells, knocks me on my knees. It didn't hurt, flirt, blood, squirt, stuff, shirt like me on a tree. After I count down 3 rounds in hell, I'll be in good company.
Alrighty, we're back, and since you had to go through the horror of not being able to hear us, we spared you the commercial. We'll play it at the end, and we let you listen to the wonderful Amish music brought to us by Ordy Packard.
That's the Dead South. They're a bluegrass. They're a satirical bluegrass band, but they keep true to the art form. So if you're not familiar with them, check them out. I think it was Al that turned me on to them, and check them out.
Yeah, I'm a bluegrass connoisseur, for real, and I just absolutely love that. I believe I may have heard of them before. If I did, I know where I heard of them, but So we're going to call it a wrap on the rundown, but I'm going to give you guys the link in chat to the rest of it so you can take a look at it if you want to. Really good web root rundown. I think they do these pretty regularly, maybe every day. So that is that's a really good source, and you'll probably hear more about things like things from this particular rundown from us. So, but
well, Jeff, you wanted to make a comment about the MongoDB before we did?
Yes, the MongoDB database breach was slightly misconfigured, and as a result, they estimate up to 8 million sales records were discovered in that database. And the database contained roughly 4 million records pertaining to Amazon UK and eBay alone, comprised mainly of payment and contact information for online shoppers. Now, if you are a nerd or a geek like me who likes to get authentic British books or D&D material, you may have shopped there, and it is something that you may want to pay attention to if you have similar tastes, especially with books. If you've gone to either of those places to look for anything, you may want to try to find out if you were included in that database breach. And I think, Lou, already you had a good place that you could direct people to see if they've been compromised by a breach like this.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and we may have
we've talked about it in the past.
Yeah, we've talked about this in the past. It's called "Have I Been Owned" or "Have I Been Pwned?"
Have I been pwned?
Yeah, have I been pwned? So this is, and it's a great site. You can basically any email address that you've ever used, put it in here, and it will tell you which data breaches that email address has come up on. And I'll tell you what's really interesting for me is to see which email addresses I have that have been compromised and which email addresses that I have that have never been compromised. And that's really fascinating because I've got a couple that have been compromised tons of times, and then all the rest of them have never been compromised. And I use them all in different places, and it's really it's interesting just to look at it no matter what. But
it's some of my clients I'll go to and they'll still have an AOL email address, and I just cringe.
Yeah, and Yahoo. Yeah,
it's like, oh my god, how long have you had this email address? 20 years. Ugh.
1997 for my AOL, and it's still up and running thing.
Yeah,
it hasn't been pwned.
No.
That's stunning.
Yeah,
probably because nobody thinks that an AOL address is real anymore.
I know, really.
AOL, I'm being punked. That's like a 555 phone number.
But
Exactly.
So we were talking about it's always a third party. So correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a third party payment system. Am I right?
I believe it was, yes.
Yes, it's always the third party. So that's talk about cringing, right? When you're working in security, every time, the developers say, well, we'll just bring in a third party, you cringe. Like your entire inside, your pucker factor increases by like a factor of 10 every time.
I have just lost all control of the security for this project.
Right, exactly. You're okay.
That's when you go update your LinkedIn resume and go, yeah, anyone else want to deal with me personally instead of a third party?
Right. Or really, actually, you say, yeah, okay, so you're going to set that key to, that access key to regenerate every 7 days. And they're like, oh, that's going to be a nightmare.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, no, not as much of a nightmare as getting breached is going to be. But anyway, so yeah, wonderful things like that people never see and you never think about. But once you put it out there, they're like, oh yeah, that could be a big deal. But what kind of what that points to is watch, be cognizant of where you're putting your credit card number and where you're putting and what you're using to do that. There's a couple of things that I do. They could be good or bad, right? I think they're good and I do them for reasons that I think are good. But as soon as I say it, somebody else is going to be like, oh, you shouldn't do that because of this, that, and the other thing. And the internet's always passing access keys back and forth. And, here's your key for that. And here's your key for that. And this lets you in. And I'll allow you to pay via PayPal because I'm going to send you this key to be able to do that, right? They don't always handle this. There's always a way to get breached, no matter whether you think what you're doing is smart or whether it really is smart. But I learned my lesson about buying things just because they're cute and I can only find them from this one place that I really don't know that much about. With the Shine breach. So I bought a blouse on Shine. A year later, they were like massively breached, and that's totally on my I've been owned list. So, it was a huge data breach, and I was like, why did I ever even buy from those people? But two things I do real quick, and then we'll move on to the next story. I shop as a guest, so I don't create an account. So they don't get a password and they don't get my credit card and they, things like that. And I use PayPal when I can because I don't have to give a company that I don't know a little bit about their security protocols or how secure they are my credit card information. Like they pass a key to PayPal, who passes, an okay, will charge you and send you the money back to them, but they never get any of that detail.
Well, I've got a simple rule when it comes to my online shopping. If it's not a brick and mortar that has an online presence, like, say, Target, Walmart, things like that, or if they don't have PayPal or Amazon Pay services as an option, I don't need to buy from them. I can find it 100 other places.
I think those are good rules. I mean, I would definitely agree with those.
And if you're talking about all this, this is the same thing I tell my clients, is that it's not a matter of if your data is breached. Your data has been breached. It is now taking a proactive role in your life to mitigate the damage of that. If you do online banking, constantly check your account. And I don't mean like you don't need to do it 5 times a day. You don't need to become OCD about it. But keep an eye on your account, because the sooner it is to the moment of fraud, the easier it is it's going to get your money back from the bank, or most of it. They can. The earlier you open the fraud ticket, the earlier you are going to be compensated. LifeLock. Just as an example, I got a new credit card last week. It wasn't as soon as I hit send on the application, LifeLock popped up to make sure that it was me.
Yep.
So that's my, short of going and making, go to have I been pwned and everything else, that's my best practices, and that's what I tell my clients as well.
Yeah. I will tell you, there is one advantage of being a student is that you get student pricing and free software and all. One thing that they've added to our student store is the Norton Suite. And I'll tell you, Ordy, because of you, I've almost purchased it. Like, I'll probably end up going back and getting that before I graduate, because
it's like I say, it's bloaty, but it's like that big-ass Swiss Army knife. You're never going to need everything that it provides, but it has all of the things. It's got your VPN.
And I'll probably never put the antivirus on my But
Right.
there's all
One thing it
there's all
does,
these other things
it comes
included.
with LifeLock. In fact, they're tied in with LifeLock now.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
it's like there's value added right there. What you spend on a
Yep.
VPN, there's your value added right there too. So there is good value in it. And yeah, you're not going to use all the things because we use better
Right.
tools for a lot of things that it
And
does. But
it's 90% off in that student store. So I mean,
right,
well,
yeah, and you
how can I go
check,
wrong?
and like I said, for people who aren't students, check around Black Friday. They've got great yearly deals. Same with Malware Bytes. And none of these companies sponsor our show. We talk about them because we use them.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Okay, so we heard, I think yesterday actually was the first time it happened. Well, it just happened Sunday.
It happened.
Sunday
happened
night.
Sunday night.
Yeah.
So this just happened.
This is
today
new.
basically.
This is all new stuff. But we heard it from Bloomberg first.
Which
Yeah, so but it's evidently, the even Secretary Pompeo has, acknowledged that it happened. Evidently there was some kind of, and this is what they're officially calling it from the State Department and the National Security Council right now, there was a cyber incident at Health and Human Services in the process of all this pandemic stuff that we haven't talked about much tonight, which is good because I don't think any of us really wanted to. But this
we don't want to relive last week's show.
Right, exactly. So this cyber incident could have been. We're not real sure what it is at this point. What I'm certain, what I feel certain at the very least took place was some kind of denial of service attack. So there was I believe there was a DDoS, which, we've talked about before on this show, how DDoSes can be used to deflect or to soften, to weaken a system, to get in. Very likely why they were doing this, but it doesn't mean that they actually got in and went to the State Department and this is what's really interesting is that
their whole description screams of a denial of service attack. And what it was they were trying to overwhelm the security the infrastructure of the Department of Health and Human Services. Right. Now, we've talked about DDoS attacks before. This is most of what I will find on my clients' computers. Most of the malware you get on your computers is actually, they're not trying to get your information. They don't care about you. They want to use your computer to be used in a DDoS attack. Yeah, and what that is when you have that little bit of malware on your computer, then the command and control server will send out a go code with the address that they want you to hit or the IPs they want you to hit. Right. And then your computer, unbeknownst to you, because it's very small web traffic that you're not going to notice, and a million other computers simultaneously who have also been breached by that malware will target a single IP address or a single URL, trying to overwhelm it so they can make their real attack.
Yes, and if you've heard the term botnet, basically what they're doing is making you a bot in the net. So your TV or your router or your computer or whatever has now, because of that malware, has now become a bot in the net of a botnet.
Your refrigerator, your car, everything that's in the Internet of shit.
Your toaster, your whatever. Yeah.
And I don't know if you're familiar with SETI at Home or the new one, what is it, Folding at Home? It's kind of using that same technology. They're just using your computer to do things. It really is, okay, here, let me come in, grab your fridge, grab your beer, and head out.
Yeah, SETI at Home is definitely a type of, a sort of, permission-based botnet because, they got permission from people, so it wasn't illegal, but but here's the really interesting, there's a couple of really interesting things about this to me, and it reminds me of the hack that we saw the last fall that just recently got attributed to Russia, where they said, yeah, that was Russia that did the hack against Ukraine. So the way it's being handled, this is what reminds me of that. The way that it's being handled internally in the government. So there are only two entities that have really spoken about this cyber incident at all. Again, it's only been 24 hours, but we've heard two agencies speak of it, or organizations within the government: the National Security Council and the State Department. So
yeah,
they might
that right
not,
there says that it's a it's a state actor.
absolutely, or that they have some idea or some indication, or they at least have reason to believe, even if it's just their gut. They're like, that had to be a state actor. Something happened in the process that made them believe that that was a state actor. The other thing is how non-committal they are about anything, and some of the words that are being used. The National Security Council, when they tweeted about this cyber incident, alluded to a text disinformation campaign. So text messages, this tells me that potentially, maybe, at least someone believes that a text message campaign was used as maybe the breach was used as a platform for it. Maybe it was just done simultaneously with it. But there was a disinformation campaign that somehow came out of this breach.
The timing was nearly simultaneous. That the rumor that a text message went out that the federal government was going to start doing some martial law type things.
National lockdown is what they were calling it.
Yeah, national lockdown in conjunction with the DDoS attack on HHS. It was the timing was nearly simultaneous.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So, and maybe that's why they're not. But they're. I mean, when you, it makes me think. With my training and with what I do, it makes me think that it's more than just timing. There's some commonality between the two to make them do that, but they're not coming right out and saying it, right? But they have said a few things, like they are certain that the purpose was disinformation campaign. The purpose of the cyber incident was disinformation.
Yes. And if anyone's listened to our shows in the past, we kind of have our culprits for disinformation.
Yeah, we talk a lot about disinformation and misinformation, and my favorite thing is to explain the difference between those two things. Misinformation is getting it wrong. Disinformation is information you create for the reason or for the purpose of spreading it.
See, now you had made a comment about the similarities to earlier Russian attacks, and the government response to it. I also want to point out in two of our previous shows too, this is also in the wheelhouse of China. In fact, they do love to get themselves into text messaging services, as we've talked about in the past. And we are in a dick slapping match currently with China too, over their response too.
As far as breaching the system, no one has more incentive to get into HHS and see what data we have, or to cause a disinformation campaign around this particular virus than China does. No, there's no bigger incentive. And there was speculation about it today on Twitter, and someone said, Iran or Russia. I said China. I've got money on China. Literally.
If I was a betting man, it would be China 100%.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't rule the long shot of Iran out on this too, because they are suffering mightily from coronavirus as well.
It's a text message like you mentioned that really screams China to me, but Iranians are smart. They like to mimic, so I can't rule that out, but my gut is still screaming 100%.
They all are. I mean, it's, and there was a DDoS attack. I mean, it still could be like Katie Hill's boyfriend or whatever.
Right. Because she has the virus now.
Right. We know he likes to DDoS. But in all seriousness, my money would be on China at least being in the lead. But I think what everybody needs to start to realize, or at least have some awareness of the fact that it's highly likely at this point that those three enemies are our primary enemies. And the likelihood of them working together to affect us in very negative ways it's not out of the realm of possibility. I'm not going to say that it's highly likely. Yeah.
In an election,
I don't know that.
And whether they're working together or not, they could be working at the same time and both doing different attacks without communicating. So it could be both or all three. I'm not sold on the working together on any aspect, but they see a giant weekend, they're going to attack. I
did that once, when I was in undergrad, and was wrong. So I swore that something would never happen that actually happened for that same reason. But and there's I will not. Someone will show me proof before I believe that Sandworm is not an Iranian-Russian crossover hacking group. However, and that's just kind of a gut thing. I don't really have proof to prove it, but I need proof that it's not true for me to believe that it's not true. So, but that doesn't make any of them any more powerful than they are. Like, you're only as good as your best hacker is good and your worst hacker is good, right? So it's like the weakest link thing. There's always going to be some dumbass like that North Korean that's going to leave his metadata behind in a PDF. Right?
See, now, I think the important takeaway from this, story too, is that in the ramp up of the coronavirus, HHS actually hardened their IT infrastructure.
Oh,
so whether there was a breach or not is unknown, but they're fairly confident that there wasn't a breach, which I think that from a usually the wheels of government moving really slow and stupid standpoint, the fact that they said, okay, we have a potential for a pandemic here, we are going to actively monitor our IT infrastructure.
Well,
so, in one, they were able to quickly respond to the DDoS attack, and two, they're fairly certain that no data was breached.
Well, and I'm fairly certain nothing was breached, too, because I think we would have started seeing it this morning, if not overnight.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, we would have seen leaked emails by now. We would have seen media leaks coming left.
Just like we've said in the past, hackers are fame fags.
They are. They're all friggin' fame fags. Someone would have taken credit, some hackers would have taken credit for it or something. It was Chuckling Squad. They'd be dumping data all over the place. We would have heard about it, right? And it would have all been a bunch of negative stuff. So, but as to the hardening, there's been more hardening of systems and data and more buildup of offensive and defensive cybersecurity since Trump took office than probably in the 4 decades before him. So, we can really, we really have him to thank for a lot of that, including the fact that they most likely did not get anything from what they attempted. And it's another thing that another reason that they're calling it a cyber incident, because something happened, and it takes time and a lot of effort to figure out what that was, no matter who you are. When you're talking about government infrastructure, it'll take some time for them to figure out exactly what. But I gotta hand it to them that they're not making claims that it was nothing when they don't know what it was. So I think that's a bonus. And they're not claiming that it was something, or blaming someone for it that they don't know actually did it. So I think they're handling it very well, like they have a lot of other things recently, and I gotta hand it to them. But I don't think, that they were breached in any way, because I think we would have seen things dropping all day long today. Crazy, like emails, and so did this, and such did that, and
I 100% agree.
Yeah. Yeah. And Mike Pompeo has a girlfriend, and you name it. You name it, we would have seen it drop today. So we didn't see any of that, and I don't think. But as far as China wanting to they want our data. They want to know what we know about their virus. What do we know about the Wu flu?
That's racist.
Okay. All right. But they want to know what we know about the Wu flu.
Sure.
But that would just tell you that they're worried about what we might know about the Wu flu.
But here's the thing: is that generally when it's us, we're like, here's what we know. Here you go. Here's everything. Here's its structure. Here's its protein markers. Here's its run with it. Just like we did with SEP and polio. So.
Right. So, anywho, yeah, I think they're going to be, just on a gut level, my gut just tells me that they did something really bad, and they know that they're going to get caught for it. Aside from the cyber incident that happened tonight, aside from anything else, it just, my gut tells me they did something bad, and that,
the biggest thing, whether it's medical or in the computer field, is everyone leaves a kind of a DNA imprint. And if China did anything wrong with this Wuhan flu thing, it is likely that there are DNA markers or fingerprints left behind, just like there is in the IT virus world, that we will be able to trace where it came from. And if there are the fingerprints, you damn well better believe they're going to be trying to find out if we know it.
Yep, absolutely. Well, yeah, absolutely. That was the first thing that occurred to me, is they want to know what we found already. You can come up with a lot of crazy theories, but in the end, some of these crazy theories are going to turn out to be correct. And that's, I think that's just going to be the nature of it in the end. It's been around since October or November, and nobody really even knew about it until December. So anyway, that in and of itself makes you go, So that's probably a good place to wrap it up. What you think, guys?
Yeah, I think that's the bulk and breadth of our material.
Yeah, we're pretty much tapped out for tonight. We could bullshit our way through something
Well,
else,
I
but
mean,
we're not going to do that.
there was a couple things from the rundown we didn't go through, like the Whisper app exposing data of 900 million users, and Western Union is finally doing the payback on victims of fraud.
And
But those
the
were
Western Union thing, I remember it, and I think that's good, and it's about time. But their employees were involved in a lot of that fraud, and they need to be paying it back. With regards to the Whisper app, I do want to say this: if you are, and this is like WhatsApp has really owned a lot of people in the using of that particular app. But there are a couple of encrypted so-called secret messaging apps out there that are safe to use. And other than that, stay the hell away from everything else. So if you want something, if you just want something free, right? Because if you're talking in an encrypted messaging app, you're probably talking about something that you don't want the whole freaking world to read, and you're expecting to not get compromised because of it, right? So Telegram is a pretty okay encrypted messenger to use, but there's a couple of things about that. Number one, it's monitored by the feds because there are a lot of bad guys that use it. Number two, if you're going to use your phone number, you're not going to be anonymous to people. Everybody that knows you and has you in their contacts is going to be able to see who you are. So you can't use it as an anonymous app because people are going to know you. You have to really know what you're doing to use it and stay anonymous. So don't try that. But its encryption is pretty good. It has a lot of law enforcement and things monitoring it. And sometimes if you use it, you're kind of considered to be a bad guy because you're using Telegram. Signal.
Yeah, but the one thing you have to remember, I mean, apps, just like everything else, you get what you pay for. So if you're using a free encryption messaging app, there's a reason why it's free.
Yeah. But the encryption on these and their vulnerabilities are really pretty low. Signal is if you're a law-abiding citizen and you're not talking to people that you don't want them to know who you are, Signal is probably